Hello guys, good afternoon. Alright, my name is Mr Redefined. In this video, I want to show you how to couple your regular outfit that has a chest flap, and then as well to lay more emphasis on how you can go about this. Now, I believe most of us might or must have seen other sewing processes or procedures, but I still want to do this for more clarification and more emphasis, should in case you have any area or any aspects that is giving you issue, so you can know how to go about it. Now, I believe all of us must have learned how to cut and gum this, but for sake of knowledge, this is the chest flap. Then this is the Ankara I will use for the outer part. I will tell you the measurements accordingly as we progress. Now, this was gummed with your material gum or cloth gum. Now, the width of this facing of this flap is 3 inches width, right? Then I folded. The length is your choice, but the length I have here is a length of 19 or thereabout. But then I'm not going to use the whole 19. I will cut it off while we are coupling. Now, I folded half an inch inwards first, and then I folded again, and then I'm left with 1/4 inch all through. This 1/4 inch is what that will be used to attach to the main fabric of your outfit. Now, having said this, the same procedure applies to this one, but then, okay, let me tell you the finishing folding after you must have folded. After I have folded, I have 1.2 inch left after folding the outfit. Now, the smaller one, in cutting, I have a measurement of 2.5 or 2.3/4 in cutting. Then I folded half an inch this way, and then I folded again. Then this folding is less than 1 inch, or exact of 1 inch. I have it to be at 0.9 or 3/4, right? So that's 0.75. So this is how the width folding came out. Then the length as well, I have a length of 16, which I will still cut as we progress. That's for the flap, chest flap area. Now, for this pocket, I first and foremost slanted this white, joined it to the Ankara or the kente, and then before I gummed, right? After gumming, I folded it accordingly. Now, the folding came out to be 4 inches. Now, the width of the pocket is solely dependent on the customer's chest size you have. The chest size I have is 43 chest, so you should have a pocket from 4 inches to 5 inches maximum. For a chest size that is less than 43 thereabout, you go 3.5 or 3, as the case may be, right? Now, the length of this pocket is, I have a length of 7 inches length. Is as well your choice. You can decide to make it to be longer or shorter, but then this is the recommended depth of the pocket. That's for the pocket. Now, the bias was cut in a diagonal form and then folded into 2 equal parts, and then the 2 edges were placed at the center points. Hemming gum was inserted underneath and hem. After hemming this one, now you now fold this one in this form. When you fold in this form, you are going to have the underneath one being a bit wider, right? You can see it here. It's a bit wider here at the downside. Now, the length of the bias is least of 21 inches. You can have it to be more than that or exact of that measurement. Now, this is the back panel of the outfit, which I believe all of us must have known how to cut by now. And then the front side of the back was gummed at this circumference. That the right side of the back was gummed at this circumference. Now, this gumming is to help you to have a nice finishing effect while sewing. Now, this is for the sleeve. Now, I believe most of us must have known as well how to cut this sleeve. Now, the sleeve was hemmed here, right? Then this is the sleeve. I think you should check out my YouTube channel or check the videos on the groups for how to cut a short sleeve, right? Then for the back facing, the back facing was gummed in totality. Everything about the back was gummed, and then I folded half an inch or 1 inch about this way. This is how the back facing should look like after you must have gummed, right? Then for the front panel of the clothes. Now this front panel is going to accommodate the what's it called, the chest flap. Now that center of the front, the inside, that's the wrong side, you use the hemming gum, you use the material gum as well to gum, because this is a white fabric. That is why you tend not to see the whiteness, but then you can see the border of the mark. This is the gum at the center. Now this gum is solely your choice, the width. Then you gum in this way, then length of your choice as well, but the length should be above 16 inches or 15 inches as the case may be. So now you have known how this was cut and how it was prepared. Now the next thing you need to know is how to couple them. Now while coupling them, you have to note the first step to take. Now the first step to take here is to make sure you measure from the neck depth, from here, measure 6 to 7 inches deep. That's the placket opening. But then because of the person I'm making it for, I'm going to measure 8 inches from the neck depth, 8 inches down. I'll mark 8. Please, whenever you're working on white senator, make sure you return a white chalk. The reason for this is to make sure that you don't leave a permanent stain of the chalk on the fabric, right? Try your best to return white while marking. I know it might not be visible for you to see, but this is the only way out for me to make a nice outfit. Just try to understand the length of 7 to 8. So now, after you must have gotten to that stage, on that point you marked 8, you give a V-like notching. Now this notching will go from up to down this way, go in by half an inch this way, half an inch inwards. This is the notching I'm talking about, half inch inwards. Then after you must have cut out in that form, then from the center fold, cut off 1/4 inch from here, from the neck, 1/4 inch all through, straight to the 8 inches mark you have, 1/4 inch, right? Cut it out in this form, 1/4 inch. Then when you have got to this stage, you have it in this form, right? Then you open it up this way, and then you are going to have an opening of this nature, right? This will enable you to fix your chest flap, and then you will not have any excesses or any rumple or any unevenness on the clothes. So when you take your time to do this, this is how it will come out. Then you start to fix the one underneath. The one on your left hand side is where you start from. Now the one on the right is the one that you use the Ankara to place. This was the customer's choice. That's why I'm using this Ankara or Kente. Now having done this, after you must have done that, then bear in mind that the folding was, you left something 1/4 inch here, right? So this is the point you're going to attach from. Then you're going to place this 1/4 inch inwards at the back this way, right? This is the 1/4 inch, right? So place it inwards this way. Place it inwards this way, and then when you place it inward that way, you make sure you are going to sew exact of that 1/4 inch you have left from the flap. When you sew it, you now fling it to the front. So let me go and gum here properly. The gum wasn't properly gummed, and then I will come back and show you how to go about it. Alright guys, so now I have gummed it. Then you are placing the 1/4 inch beneath the left part of the outfit, that's your left hand side. Then you are sewing the same 1/4 inch, it's at 0.1/4, that's 0.25 1/4 inch. Then you sew from here. Now this sewing, you must make sure you are stopping at the end of that notching. This notching here, you have notch, right? Make sure you stop at the end point. Don't sew and pass that edge. Then once you have stopped at that point, you bring it out, and then you're going to pull out the flap to come to the front, right? This flap will now come over to the front this way, right? This is how to fix the flap. Then this one will now cover it up. So you're now going to stitch the flap on top this way. Now while stitching the flap, you can now decide to cut it off to get the actual length you want. Now this cutting, once you're able to surpass the stitch point, 2 inches or 3 inches after, or 1 inch is very ideal. Then you cut it out. Then you can cut out the beneath one to make sure the sewing wasn't the folding wasn't so thick enough, then you cut from this point, right? Then you bring it out. Then after that, you make sure the flap is centralizing at the center fold. Bear in mind, you have a center iron in here. It must be centralized at this point. Then you stitch. Then when stitching, you also try your best to balance underneath the flap. Make sure it's properly tucked in, and then sew tip to tip of the flap, right? So tip to tip of it, right? Make sure it's nicely sewn. Then when you must have done this, you cannot decide. It's optional if you want to sew inwards this way, but I think I like sewing at the inside. It helps me to give me a relaxing effect at the on the flap. Then you sew as well from here. Then when coming to the notching, the V-like notching, you fold it downwards inside the flap, right? Downwards underneath. Then once you stitch and cross that point, you can stop at that level. Now the next thing you will do now is to start fixing the other one, the one that will be on top. Then you can as well cut off the excess here. I pushed out the flap to be longer than the main neck so that I can cut it off and get the actual neckline I have. So having done this now, you now take the next flap. The same thing you did on the other one is what you're also going to do here. Place it half an inch. Sorry, that's quarter inch, right? You have. Let me sew from front this way. So place it quarter inch inwards this way. So you also start from the inside, return the same quarter inch, the inch you left after folding your flap, return it that way. Then when you sew and get to the part that you notched as well, you also stop at that part. Don't exceed that point. Then you cut it out in this form, and then cut from here as well. Then the next thing you will do now as well is to push the flap to come in front, right? Push the flap to come in front. So when you have pushed it this way, now I'm meant to sew here, but I will use a yellow thread on top because of the yellow nature of this outfit. So I will change my thread to yellow. I will sew here all through, and then I'll also show you how I sew. So now I have changed my thread. So you start from here as well to sew, right? So when you get to this stage, the next thing you will do now is you pin your machine this way, and then you also make sure that it's properly tucked in here, right? Tuck it in properly, and then sew tip to tip. The tip to tip sewing is to make sure that your finishing is neat, very fine. It improves your perfection. Then at this point you can now decide on the length of the flap you want. So I think I have to trim somewhere from inside this way. Why trimming? Don't trim from the folded point, just trim from the midpoint. Then cut it out from here, somewhere like this, okay, so that you have an easy sewing downwards. So at this point you can decide to balance the flap properly this way, right? So you can lock it off and then you sew. Take your time to do this. Don't be in a haste to sew it. Make sure this edge is properly sewn. Now the flap must be centralized at the center fold of your front panel. Now at this point you now decide on the flap length, that's the chest flap length. So from the neck point, I want to stop it at point 15 or 16. Let's use 16, right? 16. So I'm going to cut before 16. Then I want to make it a V folding. So I'm cutting the under. Leaving half an inch on the both edges. So I'm cutting from somewhere here. Then I'm folding this in this form, and then I'm folding this as well in this form. Now in such clothes, it's best done with a chest flap, like a V folding or a V fold at the down. It helps you to give you a nice effect or a nice finishing. So you fold the V this way and then you sew. Then also make sure that the V is pointing at the center of this front block. That's that center ironing, right? This V must point here. Then you sew from the tip. Sew from here. So you make sure you draw out the excesses down, right? Making sure that the both neck are equal. So bear in mind that the thread I changed was only the top thread. So now you start arranging and sewing this way. Now bear in mind that you can decide to use the same white to attach this. Then you can also as well decide to use any material of your choice to attach this. This one I'm using is my customer's choice, so that's why I'm using the kente on it, right? Possibly this might be their uniform. So now this next sewing is going to stop at least from neckline, depends on what you notched, from the point you notched your neck depth. So I notched at 8, so I will also stop at 8, right? You must also stop at the same neckline you notched. So you stop at 8, and then at that point that is thick, the place the underneath flap ended, you are going to make any sewing of any style of your choice in order to flatten that point. You can decide to make an X sewing, an X shape, a Y shape, a Z shape, any shape you want. You must make a sewing there, so that the essence of that sewing is to flatten the width or the weight of the notching underneath. So you cut off your thread as well. You cut your threads. Then when you must have finished that, you also cut off the excess of the neck, right? Then after this, the next thing you will do now is to attach the pockets, the one I have shown you already. So the pocket is what I will attach now. So because of the fact that I have changed my yellow thread, so I will use the yellow first to sew on the yellow parts, then before I change over again to the white thread. So now the pocket positioning or position, it depends on your customer's chest side as well. So from the shoulder, since you have not joined the front and back, you push out 2 inches from the shoulder this way. Push out 2 inches from the shoulder tip, and then place your pocket at 9.5 or 9. So I'm using 9.5 for my customer. Then it will be 1 inch or half an inch away from the chest flap. Depends on your customer's choice as well. So I'm using 1 inch away from the flap, right? Meaning 1 inch from the side flap is where I'm positioning my pocket. 1 inch from the side flap. Then you place it in this form. Now it's possible that you are meant to pin. Now this pinning is to enable you have a smooth positioning. Now you can decide not to pin if you know you can handle it. So you can pin Now these pins are made for us to use to hold fabrics together prior to sewing or to joining. So try your best to use pin as well while working, right? Make sure that this 1 inch at the width is maintained all through to this point. Then when you have gotten to this stage, you must make sure as well you pin both the up and the down to make sure you have a perfect placement of your pockets. Then after this, because of the yellow part, I will have to first of all sew this yellow aspect first before I switch over to my white threading. So I'm sewing from here as well, from the yellow part. So you sew tip to tip as well, this way. So you also sew from here as well, tip to tip. Now the pocket shape is solely your choice. You can make it to be block, circular, or any form you want, right? So while sewing, make sure you stretch out the fabric so that it won't have rumples underneath. Then stop at the yellow. Then I will change to my white thread and then continue the white aspect sewing. From here I will sew and stop at these edges, right? So now I have changed the white thread, so I have to complete the white aspect of the pocket sewing, right? So this is what you must do when you are making such combination pockets and color combination of the pockets. You must make sure you use the corresponding colors to sew on the corresponding areas of the pockets. Then you also complete this one from the white section. So now you make sure you do this and then end properly. So we have finished fixing our chest flap and our pockets. So now the next thing you are going to do now is to start attaching your back block to this front block, right? So I'll also show you how to go about that. So right now, having seen the back facing, you make sure as well you trim off any excess gum coming on the shoulder area, right? So now, having done this now, then you bring your label. Now this label is positioned 2.5 to 3 inches downwards. If you need your label, you can send me a DM. I will tell you how to go about it. I can help you to produce your label at a very cheap and nice price. And make sure the label you're going to use is a woven label. Woven label doesn't fade off as time goes on. It retains with the clothes, right? Whereas those nylon labels, it tends to melt or fade off as time goes on. The writings of this woven can never fade off because it's with threads they use to write it, so it can't go. Neither is it painting. It's a woven label. That's the best label you can use in your outfits. So you stitch this label at the center folding of the back panel at the wrong side, right? That's the inside of the neck. Then having done this now because of the fact that we are going to pipe our neck of our senator, you don't need to stitch or use your facing to cover the neck edge now. What you just have to do is to make sure you use your facing now to seal the shoulder for now. Then the piping will take care of the neckline, right? So now this is how the front and back should be, and this is where the back facing should be. Then what you just have to do now is to hold the front and back panel together this way, the shoulders being equal. Now take the back facing and place in front of your front panel. That's hold these two together, hold this one together, and hold this together. Then sew. After sewing, you now fling this to go to the back. That's the easiest and the fastest way you can do that. You all know I used to show you one of the simplest methods of sewing, and then it goes very well. Anything I show you, I must have done it severally and confirmed it before I come up with a video on it. Then make sure you also follow me on YouTube. You also follow me on Instagram, and as well subscribe to my YouTube. My Instagram handle remains Mr Redefined. Then on YouTube, you search for YouTube Mr Redefined Clothing, and make sure you subscribe. To subscribe to YouTube channel is free. The reason you should subscribe is to make sure you get notifications whenever I post new videos on sewing matter. So if you don't subscribe, you will not be notified. So make sure you subscribe. It's just a free click, right? It's not a paid version of subscription. It's a free version of subscription. Click on the red icon that writes subscribe. When you go to YouTube, open your YouTube channel, open your YouTube app this way, right? And then when you search my name, if my name comes out this way, right, you will see a red signal here that shows subscribe. Okay, let me just look for another channel to subscribe to a channel so that you see how it's done, right? Okay, so now look at this channel now. If you want to subscribe, this red button here, you click on the button subscribe, right? So you have subscribed to this channel now, right? So this is how to subscribe to the channel, and then you go to the YouTube channels to follow the videos there. Then if it's for Instagram, the Instagram, how to follow me on Instagram, when you put your Instagram handle, you search for my name. Once you see this name, Mr Redefined, then you click on my channel. My Instagram account is on private. You send a request for follow, then I will accept it, and then you'll be following me on YouTube, on Instagram as well. Thank you guys. So now back to the joining of the outfit. You also make sure you join the shoulder with 1/2 inch. Now you also repeat the same process or the same protocol on your the other left part of the shoulder as well. So you also join with 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, right? So make sure you sew accordingly, right? Then when you join these two together, you have your front and back piece held together. Then you're not meant to fling the facing that was placed in front to the back, right? So when you fling it to the back, it will come out in this form. Then you will now lock the back facing properly. So this is how best you can attach your facing, and then make sure that everything is measured before you start coupling. Now at this point, you also try to make sure that the center folding of the facing is corresponding to the center fold of the back piece of your outfit. So once the two center folds are corresponding, you go ahead to sew your facing. Now at this point as well, you can decide not to sew tip to tip. You can as well decide to sew tip to tip, but I prefer all my facings to be held or to be sewn tip to tip. Now make sure as well you stretch out the underneath fabric to make sure that there is no rump or air underneath your facing. Then you sew as well. Now the trick I use in making sure I get an exact tip to tip is to make sure that your eyes must be focusing on the edge of this facing, entering at the center foot of your fabric, right? Now the process of your feeding the machine with your fabric, if it's stretched, the needle is at constant position. It gives you a stretch sewing as long as you have your fabric entering at the midpoint of your footer. So that is the trick I use in getting a tip to tip sewing. So my eyes is focusing on the movement of this back facing entering at the center of the foot of the machine. This is how it goes. And while sewing as well, make sure you stretch your fingers on the fabric so that it will help you to control or have maximum control over the fabric, right? Then this is how it's been done. Then make sure you hold it firmly this way, and then you sew as well. Then this is one of the simplest ways you can attach your facing to your fabric, and then you have a nice sewing. Then in most cases, I like to top stitch the shoulder. Now the reason of doing this is to make sure there's no puffy effects on the shoulder, or bulging effect rather on the shoulder. So top stitch tip to tip as well. Now before you do this, you must make sure as well that your hands must be straight enough to give you a nice straight line while sewing. Then you also do the same thing on the other side of the shoulder. You stretch it as well, and then you top stitch as well. So guys, we are done joining the front panel to the back panel. Now the next thing you will do now is to pipe your neck. Now I believe most of you as well must have seen some videos on piping, and I believe you must have practiced it. And then I also take my time as well to go through the whole procedures or protocols of piping, for you to have a nice or a convinced knowledge on how to pipe your neck. Now, before you pipe your neck, you must have made sure the neck measurement is corresponding to whatever neckline you have. So for the neckline I have, is neckline of 17. So I will go and iron this now. I will now trim this area of the neck inwards. I will trim it so that I will make sure it falls back to a perfect circular effect I want, right? Don't tamper with the depth. If you are going to trim your neck, trim from the edges this way towards the back. Don't encroach on the front panel of the neck. I will do this now and then come back and show you how I did it, and then show you how to pipe the neck as well. Alright, now so I have finished trimming my neck, and as well I trimmed my shoulder as well. So after the trimmings, you now have to start piping your neck. So I believe most of you must have watched previous videos on how to pipe your neck. Then you start from here, fold the piping in this form, and then insert the flap beneath, right, this way. Make sure it's properly tucked in this way. Make sure it's properly tucked in, and then you start sewing. Make sure the one you folded is not coming out. Take your time to arrange this properly. Then once you have arranged properly, you also arrange your neckline this way. Then make sure as well you tuck in the underneath material coming out in this form, right? Then you start sewing, right? So take your time to do this. So as you are piping, make sure that your piping material is entering underneath your at the center of the folding of the piping, right? The neck rather. The neck of the cloth is getting to the end. Don't allow the neck to be this way. Make it to lap at the folding this way. So you sew tip to tip as well. Then this sewing is going to enable you cover the neck edges with your piping material. So my thread has finished. Let me change my reel and continue. So now I have changed my reel. So you sew from there as well. You make sure you get to this stage. Now I believe most of you must have practiced this, but then consistency. You need to do this 2 to 3 times. Do it as often as possible for you to relax that you have learned it. Don't do it once and feel you have learned it. Do it repeatedly for perfection's sake, right? So you go in this form. Now, while approaching to this stage, cut half an inch or 1 inch away from the end of the flap, then fold it under as well, and then you as well fold the flap, the piping in this form. So make sure you follow my procedure. Please don't use another method to sew and then come with your questions. Make sure you use my own method, so by the time you're asking question, I will know where your error could come from. Most of you will go and use method B or method A or method C to cut, and then come asking me questions, the issue they're facing, why you not use my method. So how will I know the issue when the method you use in sewing or cutting rather is not my own method of sewing or cutting? So make sure whenever you come to me for assistance or for questions and possible solutions, make sure you have tried out my own method, and make sure you must have watched the video on YouTube or the different groups on Telegram which these videos will be sent to, right? So bear in mind that the level of your practice is solely dependent on you. I will make sure that the videos are available on all platforms for you to watch and learn. Then for you to practice them and perfect, it's now your own making. So don't assume that everybody is not practicing. Some of you people are sending their requests, their results on my WhatsApp and personal messages on Telegram as well, while some call on phone on a daily for more clarifications. So don't assume, probably because the group is not throwing questions, don't assume that nobody is practicing. Most of you are practicing behind the camera. So please don't relent, don't give up. It's not easy, but when you try it out 2 or 3 times, you'll find it to be easy and fun. So for the piping, I'm also top stitching at the snip point. Now this third sewing is to help me to relax this piping so that I will not have much foldings after I must have piped, right? So I'm top stitching from the midpoints of my piping. So take your time to do this as well. I hope this video will help us to solve some issues of piping and other sewing related issues, right? So the next thing I will do now is to fix my sleeve. So I have finished piping, right? So I'll have to fix my sleeve now, and then I will now lock the sides of my outfit. Make sure your threads are properly cut. Then I have finished piping. Look at how neat your piping should be. Any threading, you can cut it off with your scissors, right? You can cut it off with your scissors. So this is how neat your piping should be. So this is how your piping should be always. Always cut off your threading. So now after the piping, the next stage you will do is to go and iron it on your fabric, on your table, to see the outcome. But I will fix my sleeve first before I iron. So on fixing my sleeve, you must have trimmed your shoulder before you start fixing your sleeve. I did this without showing you guys. You must have to watch other videos on how to trim shoulders, right? Then after that, you trim and notch, and then the sleeves are short sleeves as well. You notch as well, and then you place the 2 notches together this way, the notch point to the notch point, and then you start joining your sleeve. Make sure you trim your shoulder, your armhole, before you fix your sleeve. Don't fix your sleeve without trimming your shoulder, please. Very important. So now you are going to sew 1/2 inch or 0.3 as the case may be. So now when you must have gotten to this stage, you make sure that everything is properly done, and then you as well sew the corresponding parts of your sleeve as well. Now this part you're sewing now will be the part that will the back part of the sleeve as well. So whatever you're doing on one of the sleeves is what you're also going to repeat on the other part of the sleeve. So having shown you how the sleeve is being joined, Now the next thing is to show you how to lock the sides as well. So I will go and pin and mark and show you how it was done, and then before we go ahead in the folding processes. Now the next thing I will do now is to weave this area. After doing the second part of the sleeve, I will weave here first before you proceed as well. Alright guys, so now I have weaved, and then I have applied my measurements, and then the next thing you do is to connect as well, right? And then you make sure you sew from the point of your marking. Use white chalk, right, in connecting your line. So after doing this now, the next thing you do is to fold the top length, and then you're done with your top. So I believe this will help you to make your outfit. The measurements you have to start from the center point to apply your measurements, which I had to be for the 3 chests, 10 3/4, right? So this is the point I marked. So I use a white chalk, so you won't be able to see the white chalk. So I will sew now and then fold, and that is the end of the making. And then you put your pressing buttons or your buttonholes at the flap, as the case may be. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Mr Redefined, and then subscribe to my YouTube channel as Redefined Clothing Africa. Thank you guys.